Welcome to Revolution Parts. I'm Sarah Vantine here with Ted Ings. We have an exciting panel today, and we're going to be talking about the 500K a month playbook, how to build high growth online parts business in under a year. Ted, we have some very special guests with us today.
Sarah, we have the Brian Benstock from Paragon Honda, Acura, White Plains Honda. He's in Queens, New York today. And from Revolution Parts, we have Jensay Numa, becoming quickly a household name. Brian and Jensay, welcome to the broadcast.
Well, it's good to be here, but did I hear Sarah say some misinformation? We've already just started, and she's giving misinformation. She said this is the 500K guide, and Sarah, that's outdated information because we cracked 650,000, 640,000 last month. So 500K, throw that playbook out the window. This is the 600,000 a month plus playbook that we're going to talk about today.
So exciting, Brian. Congratulations. And this is going to be a lot of fun to sit down and discuss this with you.
It's really great to share the stage with a person that is really responsible for it, and that's Jensay Numa. Jensay, the sensei, continues to really lay it down for us, provide the rails that we can run on, and we're doing a nice job in cooperation with him and Revolution Parts.
So just a matter of a few weeks ago, we did a live Q&A with Marat, Brian, and he was here along with the parts managers. And we had a whole lot of questions in the chat that came through, Brian. I mean, for a parts webinar, I've never seen so many questions.
Money, 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 money. How do we do it? How do we get our share?
So everybody, we couldn't get to all the questions a few weeks ago. As we go through today, drop your email in the chat box if you'd like us to get back to you. And if we don't get to your questions, but we hope to get to everybody that we can today. Brian, let's start with, you've built some very successful businesses throughout your career. What made you believe that online parts could become one of your biggest growth opportunities?
You know, I had a presentation. In that presentation, it suggested that online parts sales, specifically e-commerce, would be one of the largest e-commerce growth opportunities in 2025. And we asked a really simple question: what if that's true? And we took a look at what we were doing with e-commerce, and it was a pitiful number, pitifully small, but we say we put, you know, it's like the kid that doesn't study for a test and gets a C and says, I didn't study. Well, we didn't study for the test. We got a D. So we thought that was pretty good. We were doing about $10,000 a month in online e-commerce part sales. And we're doing much more than that overall part sales. But the e-commerce portion of it was by happenstance. And somebody with a Commodore 64 computer happened to find us and buy a part. We put just a little bit of effort in, and we went from 10,000 a month to about 30,000 a month. And I can remember Laura from the ad agency calling me up all excited, 30,000 a month. We had, you know, they know how to dress things up. Now it's a 300% increase, you know, and it was really just from 10,000 to 30,000. But that presentation that I gave, Jensay's team was at that meeting, and Ted, I think you were at the meeting also. It was at downtown New York City, and Abraham, who was the CEO of the company, said, "Hey, we should talk. And can you come out and talk to my people?" But I said, "I want to talk to you. You know, I heard a little bit about you. Can you help us?" And he said, "Sure." And that became really the driver for me, is to get closer to the team at Revolution Parts and to see if the internet was right, if the one of the largest growth areas is e-commerce for parts. And the more research we did, we realized that it really is. Our friends at Amazon are there, and a couple of other big players. So we wanted to participate in the upside.
Brian, it's so incredible to hear this story, and again, just setting the stage, talking about where your online parts business was before you decided to join Revolution Parts. And Jensay, you know, I'm curious to get your perspective. When you first started working with Paragon, what did you see, you know, from your perspective, and what were the biggest opportunities that you identified immediately?
Yeah, so I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it's one of the most critical things that every dealership should have, needs to have, and I think is critical for the dealer's growth. And it's top-down support. When I was actually doing this years ago as a parts director, and when I was first introducing this, as I grew up in a dealership world myself, I had to convince my GM that e-commerce made sense. Then I had to prove it to him that it made sense. When I met Brian and team, they were ready to go. You know what I mean? So the difference is top-down support. I mean, they saw Brian's a visionary, and he has risen up a bunch of visionaries around him within the dealership group, and they all are hungry and ready for opportunity. So that number one is the best. Is the first thing is that just the willingness to see the vision of where we can go. Then the next opportunity or that I identified was that they were willing to be coached, right? Willing to follow a game plan and outline so that way and actually trust, the process so that way they can get where they need to be. Some people, whenever you throw out ideas, they're like, "Oh, let me tell you, I've tried this, I've tried that, but we're talking about 2026 right now. It doesn't matter what happened. It's about what we're doing right now."
Jensay,
Like
I
that.
think that's a great point. I think that's a great point to be coachable. And I know guys with marginal experience that are uncoachable. And thankfully, we've got a culture here that really is very coachable. I had a running coach when I was running. I have a strength training coach. I have a nutrition coach. I have, a longevity coach. And this you can leverage other people's experience, and we certainly were able to leverage your experience. And if I'm hiring or engaging you, I best listen. And you certainly knew and know more about that business than we did, so we were really willing to learn, and we were able to. And it didn't hurt us that you were able to give us some quick steps to give us an immediate result, and I think everyone got excited about the pull of the future, the what's possible. And we set some pretty audacious goals, and real happy about that.
I like that a lot. Everybody, we've done this a couple times, and Brian, we've heard you say the term acres of diamonds,
Yeah.
as the opportunity. If you would remind our audience, what do you mean by that?
Well, my partner, my mentor, my boss, he's passed away, but that's Paul Singer. And I was always, I had dealeritis when I was younger. I probably still do, but I'm looking over here. We can get this dealership. I'm looking over there. And he had a really great way of saying no without saying no, like any professional, right? He said, Brian, let's take a look. That's out there, but let's take a look at what's right here, because Northern Boulevard, there's that's littered with gold, and the gold is right underneath our feet. And he told me the story of Acres of Diamonds. It's an African farmer, and he saw all these foreigners coming to Africa and mining and getting rich, discovering diamonds. And he sold the farm, of course, as the story goes, and it's a true story, by the way. He sold the farm in search of his fortune, and he went broke. And he unfortunately and tragically threw himself in a river and committed suicide. He was embarrassed to his family, committed suicide. And later, somebody went to the place where his former farm was, and they noticed on the mantle in the house this giant rock. And the person pointed out to the person who now owns the farm, "Hey, what's that rock?" And the guy said, "No, it's just a rock. The yard's a terrible farm. It's littered with them." He said, "That's not a rock. That is a diamond in the raw form." And it turns out that the farm that the person sold was a lousy farm because it was littered with acres and acres of diamonds. And it turned out to be one of the most productive diamond mines in the world, the Golconda diamond mine in Africa, and it's still an existing mine today. And the lesson was, it's mirrors, not windows. Your fortune's not out there. The fortune's right in the mirror. And before you go out there, let's extract all that you can from where you are. And this Acres of Diamonds in this particular vertical parts was here all along. I just couldn't see it because I was looking at what everybody else was doing out there. And so, it's a wonderful metaphor. It applied to used cars. Again, we're looking to expand and get another Honda dealership. And Paul talked to me about right under your feet. Used cars is a wonderful business to be in. And so I think, before you go out there, make sure you're getting all you can with what you've got right where you sit.
Such incredible advice, Brian, and it's amazing to really think about that story and how this applies to the parts department. Before Jensay, I want to come to you, but before we do, the comments section, lots of questions coming in right now. The Revolution Parts team is busy answering what they can in the chat, but if you want to get your questions answered, please drop your email in there so they can also respond with more information relative to your specific questions. Jensay, what do you think about this? I mean, talking about the acres of diamonds opportunity, a lot of dealerships are sitting on this opportunity right now when it comes to selling parts. What do you think most dealerships misunderstand about this?
Well, what's interesting, because of the parts department, I like to call it like the backbone of the dealership, right? The backbone is very important in a body. It holds the body up, but nobody sees it. You don't work out your backbone, Nobody says, "Man, your backbone looks really good today." You know what I mean? It's the part of the body that is hidden but is critical, right? And I feel like when I think about like e-commerce and like putting energy into the parts department, every other part of the dealership has energy going into it. And what I mean is there's investment going in, there's advertisement going out, there's people are aware of it, there's training happening. Every other department, typically, except for the parts department. So it's an acres of diamonds because it's a place that's like structurally important for a dealership to run. You can't have a dealership without a parts department, but there's the least amount of attention that typically happens in the parts department. And it's for a lot of reasons, right? And it's for years, it's always been like that. And when I was growing up as a, lot porter and parts driver in the parts warehouse and parts counter, I always noticed that. I was always looking around like, how come we're always talking about all these other departments. Now, all the other departments are all critical, but a body doesn't operate with just one piece. It needs all pieces, So
Jensay, it's funny. I owe American Honda an apology, and I'll give it to them right here. I thought they were crazy when we saw the design layout for the dealership. I thought they were crazy because in the square footage allocation, they actually have more square footage allocated for the parts department than they did for the showroom. And I said, these guys are crazy. There's no way I'm going to do that. Give me more space for the showroom. But I was wrong again. They know exactly what they're doing, because if you're optimizing, and that's what we're talking about here, is optimizing. If you're optimizing your parts department, you're going to need the storage. Now, today, it may be a little bit different because we have same day parts orders. And so they've done something very positive to reduce the need for the real estate. Back in the day, you had to store the parts. It took too long to get them. But there's still a huge need to have the square footage there be the appropriate size. And, we're busting at the seams. At White Plains Honda, we just double decked the parts department, and it looks great, and it is great. And got the young man there who wants to be a parts manager. He will be a parts manager who's is fully leveraging that. So we're excited about the changes that are going on in all three of the locations.
Brian, I'm wondering, was there a specific moment when you realized this is actually going to be much bigger than we expected?
Not yet. And let me qualify that. I knew we could get to $1 million. I knew we could get to $500,000. So it was a question of time. We're getting there a lot sooner than I thought. I mean, I think the opening goal was to get to $500,000. And I think we gave ourselves 6 or 8 months to get to $500,000, or maybe a year. And then we said we were going to reset and go to $1 million. Well, we got there in 4.5 months. And so that's pretty spectacular. And I think it's been without exception that we've added month over month to the prior numbers. And we did it without any expense or increase in expenses relates to personnel. I'm not going to get away with that much longer. We are busting at the seams. Patrick up there, his hands are like this from boxing. And we're putting the right resources to support the team. But I wanted to say, hey, before we add headcount, let's utilize what we've already got. And I think we're getting, I think we've maxed out what an individual can do in a parts department. I was looking at our financial composite, and we're doubling the part sale per person in our parts department compared to the composite other dealers in our market area. So I do think it may be time. And Jensay, don't tell anybody.
Well, Jensay, it's so exciting to hear, again, just all the success that Brian is having and how they continue to build. And, again, this all had to start somewhere. And there's a lot of dealers that are in our audience today that are thinking about this and going, gosh, I mean, this is Brian Benstock we're talking about in his store, but I'm not sure that my parts department is ready for that, or I'm not sure that I'm going to have the same kind of success. Jensay, the unique thing about Revolution Parts again is the strategy that you implement and that you help dealers really, get to this level. When you start with a dealership that is new to online selling, where do you first focus to make sure they are successful?
Yeah. So I think about Revolution Parts is the platform, right? And what a platform is designed to do is to position an account or a individual to grow. It doesn't guarantee it. It positions them, right? So what Revolution does a phenomenal job at is it positions them for their website. It positions them for their connection with channels. It positions them for their inventory feeds. It positions them for their order processing. It positions them for their label making, financial setups. Like there's a lot of things they position you for, but one of the things that's really important to be successful is you can have something amazing in your garage, but if you don't think it's important, it never goes outside, right? So the thing is that I think that for us, like usually one of the first things we have to work on with accounts is yes, they have to have the right foundation revolution, then they have the right attitude and attention to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Because if they're canceling orders, they don't have their foundations of processes down, they are, they're kind of treating it like a thing on the side over here that's a little annoying to them. Then they're not going to get where they want to go with it, right? Because it's whatever you give attention to grows. That's something that I've learned,
Yeah.
right? And whatever you don't give attention to doesn't. And most people treat this as, oh, my parts manager gave it to me, or the GM dropped it on my lap, so whatever. And that's how they
Mm.
treat the energy that it takes to make it work, the customer service that they have to. So these are the things I'm typically talking about at the beginnings to frame the mind. Like when Brian and team got in consulting, one of the first things I did January 2nd was I flew to New York, right, to go meet them. And I wanted to
Hmm.
talk to the parts managers in person, right? Have a conversation with them, have a discussion so that we could talk about where we're going, what's possible, just to help frame the mind, right? So that way they could be ready for what we need to do. So.
I like that. Powerful stuff. Brian, question for you. Growing from, I think we said 42 or so $1,000 a month, more than, well, I have here 500,000, but now we've already crushed that. You're at 650 a month in under a year is incredible. What's the secret to unlocking that explosive growth?
Well, I think Jensei said it right. I think the OPP, right, other people's platform. There's a platform that makes ordering and handling the transactions easy. I think for most of us to try and figure that out on our own, I think we're ill-equipped to do that. So you take advantage of the technology. Then it's people and process. The most important thing is the market's out there, and it's really for us eye-opening to see just how robust that market is. And again, it's like anything else. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And of course, we see our friends at Amazon there in a big way. And so we work with Amazon. Not only do we work with them, but we model what they're doing. We're in no danger of catching Amazon, but that's not really the goal. It's to be able to be a participant, to be a close second to Amazon would be a pretty good place to be there. And success does leave clues. The internet gives you a lot of the information you need, and they've created these parts pages, and they look like VLAs, and they're descriptive. They show a picture of the part, and so we think we can mimic and we can mask that, and to have a branded Honda dealership selling genuine Honda and Acura parts is something I think the customers is a real market for. And I want to add to that what we've seen in many other fixed ops situations. If you type in tires near me, chances are an automobile dealer is not going to show up. Yeah, that's the business we're in. If you type in oil engineer me, chances are the independents are going to show up. And I hear from my dealer friends, yeah. We're going to get people that have Chevrolets if they do that. And that's not the business we're in. I understand that, but you're also going to have a lot of people that have Hondas. Our Honda market share is about 30%. So if that's an accurate fact, and we put an ad out, then there's a 30% chance that we're reaching the right audience. The great thing about that is there's no other dealer in there in parts near me, Honda near me. And so we think that creates an opportunity.
So well said, Brian. And it's amazing, again, just hearing all the structure and how, you really crafted this mission for you and your team. And Jensay, I think we would be remiss to not discuss, the operational components, on this discussion, because the systems really too are an important component when it comes to how dealerships can really start to grow quickly. So I'm curious, what operational systems, within the dealership become really important once a dealership starts to grow their parts e-commerce business?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question just kind of painting a path really to answer that, because when this first starts, right, like it's small, and anything big was small at one point, right? So what typically happens is you have to start the process of just adding it toward normal. I have to teach our dealers usually to start adding it to their normal workflows at the beginning of the day. Check your orders, have a system for customer service, have a system for fulfillment time, have a system for order part sourcing, right? Sometimes you have to special order parts. Have a system for where e-commerce goes. You have to start separating your e-commerce segment in a parts department versus your standard parts that are coming in within the parts department, right? And then over time, dedication, right? Is there a dedicated person that is handling e-commerce, right? Is it so that there's attention so that way things can grow the way that it needs to? Sometimes it's easy for people to be pointing this way on stuff, right? Like, oh, he was supposed to do it, I was supposed to do it, and then things don't get done, right? And then over time, what typically happens when the account starts to really grow, I've always had, and if an account wants to get to the level that Brian's accounts are now today, I always had in my mind, I was building a department in a department. If you start with that mindset, I'm building a department in a department. Now you can start structuring things as you're growing, because some people don't view it that way. They view it as, oh, I'm making another income stream. Yes, but when you think about building a department in a department, you start to create the proper systems to support that. And then when it gets to a certain size, it does need its own dedication, right? Brian's guys, it has its own little area. That was another thing when I went to the last pop-up event that was at Paragon, which is an awesome setup that we did recently. I took advantage of that pop-up event to go visit the guys, right? And we talked about where are we going to put the e-commerce parts department? What does I need to look at? Where the guys can sit? How can they handle certain things? So that way they can have the proper dedication and systems. Where does a FedEx guy walk in? Is it easy for him? Does he hate your dealership because of how you're setting stuff up? You know what I mean? Because you want to be good friends with your FedEx and UPS and USPS people. You know what I mean? So
make it easy for him to do his business, because he's a key part of that supply chain, right? Or she, in Federal Express. And, I wouldn't hurt, get him some cookies or brownies there. You got to kiss a little backside every now and then, because you want to keep those wheels greased and lubricated as people come in. What do you do when the parts guy is off? Do we say, wait, we'll ship the part a day later? And everyone's entitled to 2 days off in the parts department. So what provisions have you made to make sure that the stuff flows? Simple, basic stuff. I love what you said, Jensay, about a business within a business. I had the pleasure, the privilege, the honor of meeting Jack Welch, the former GE chairman, and he said there's something magical about finding a business within a business. And I think we've done that over and over again. This is a hub and spoke business. We have an incredible database of customers, and we have a lot of services that they'd gladly buy from us if they knew we offered them. So it's key to be able to offer them. And when we look at that map of the United States of America, where we're shipping parts to, people were amazed that we're shipping them all over the country. And I was drawn to the places we're not yet shipping, and the untapped opportunities that are out there. But rest assured, I think we've shipped to just about 49 of the 50 states in the United States of America. So that's pretty exciting.
Brian, a few weeks ago, Marat was with us, and he told us that
He's
from the
smart.
outset,
That
it
guy's
was
bright.
in, oh, Marat is a superstar. He
Yeah.
told us and told the audience that from the outset, there's been a marketing investment that Paragon has made into e-commerce parts. Was there ever a point when you questioned whether that marketing investment was worth it, and what gave you the confidence to do that and keep investing?
At no point did we feel it may or may not be worth it. I think Jensay spoon fed us the strategy. It was a little at a time. I here take a little more, take a little more, and we got a very verifiable ROI, right, or the ROAS, return on advertising spend, and we saw it. And he said, we're if you put a little bit more towards that, you'll get closer to this plan over here. And if you get to this plan, what'll end up happening is there's no more cost associated with the sale, so your yield per transaction is going to go up. But that to try and if Jensay was offering that or proposing that day one, we may have looked at him with a little bit of a cockeye, saying, "Wait a second, this guy's trying to sell me advertising. He's not in the advertising business. He doesn't benefit financially if we spend more for advertising, and he wants to make sure that the dealer has the data necessary to increase the advertising spend with confidence." He didn't articulate it that way with me, but he made recommendations, and those recommendations seemed like a logical next step for us as we were bumping up on where we were. And I think it came that the last incremental increase was $2,000. And with $2,000 more, it would cost us less per transaction. And with the number of transactions we're doing, that made perfect sense. So it was a logic play. And again, if I spend $1 and I know I'm going to get two back, then I'm going to spend $2. And if I'm going to get four back, then I'm going to spend $4 to get eight back. And we're seeing growth like that. Somebody was complaining, well, I tried that and there's no margin in it. And I don't want to talk about the margin percentage, but the margin percentage is such that $1 million a month in part sales, it's a significant increase in our fixed operations to profitability, a significant contribution.
Brian, it's incredible to hear, again, just this success that you're having, and also, the stories along the way, and how Jensay and the Revolution Parts team have really supported this journey. Brian, I have another follow-up question, but before we get to that, just want to remind everybody, drop your email in the chat box now if you have questions, if you want to connect with Revolution Parts to learn more about how all of this that we're talking about today applies to your dealership. Drop
I
your
can't
email now in the chat.
can't
Brian,
believe the amount of activity in the chat. I can't believe what we're getting there. That's pretty awesome. That's great for parts. Who'd have thought?
Parts.
it's absolutely incredible, Brian. And, for our parts and dealer audience that's listening today, I'm sure this is a question that they're also thinking about, looking back, what would you have done sooner knowing what you know now?
I would have hired Jensay out of elementary school, and and we'd be at 10 million a month in parts. We were engaged with, and it's funny how many. Somebody told me this a long time ago. We were engaged with Revolution Parts, and it was just another one of those $1,500 to $2,000 a month, whatever it was, vendors, and we were getting a return, and we weren't spending the time there. And I think, like so many other products that we dealers we take on, we get really excited and we put it down. I wish we had met some people at my level with that company at that time that could have shown me what it took me years to stumble on. And I found it quite by accident as I was reviewing fixed ops opportunities. And I came across a graphic. And I thought the graphic was really interesting and put it into a presentation. And I do like to eat my own cooking. I'm looking at that and saying, what if that's true and how can we do that? And sure enough, we were able to have some great success. So in answer to the question, I wish we would have gone all in from day one, and we did not, but we're here now.
Good. Love that. Jensay, over to you. If a dealership could focus on three things after today's webinar with you and Brian Benstock, what would they be? What would those three things they should be focusing on?
Well, first thing I'd say is they need to have a plan to add e-commerce to their parts department. That's number one. If they're not already in e-commerce, they should get in e-commerce. It's the way of the world, right? I'd recommend Revolution. I'm not trying to knock other providers and et cetera, and not because I work at Revolution. I was a customer of Revolution for 8 years, and I used other providers while I was using Revolution at the same time. All right. So I've used multiple platforms, and I actually made my dealership pay for Revolution, even though some of them were free. That's just me. Okay. So that's number one. Um, Number two is if they're on a platform, recommended Revolution, work with their CSM, right, or account manager or consultant to create a success plan, right? Because a lot of people are on the platform and they've never talked to their CSM that's on their account. And sometimes it's not our fault, it's their fault because they're not paying attention to it and they don't care about it. So if you don't care about it, you don't pay attention to it, it's not going to grow. Every account has a dedicated person that works with them. Obviously, if you're in consulting like Brian's team is, it's higher level support and focus that they would get when you're in a consulting relationship. And when we're in that lane, we create a success plan to outline what based on what the dealership wants to accomplish. So that's number two. Number three is they need to be willing to invest in some form of marketing. I don't care what anyone says. Any website without marketing is like building a building or building a grocery store in the woods and nobody knows you ever opened it. Okay. You have to create awareness that you're there. And here's the last thing I'll say to that, because parts people for some reason fight this. They fight this thought of investment. Okay. It's a battle because the parts department asks for nothing. Okay. So typically the parts department asks for shelves and more parts allocation. That is it. All right. So you have to ask for it. And here's the thing, every owner has a budget in all the dealers there's an advertising budget in every dealership I've ever seen, but parts has nothing to do with it. And if you just ask for a piece of the advertising budget, it might help out. It's already there. You just don't ask for it. So that's what I would recommend.
Jensay, that's great advice. But I'll say in all fairness, the dealers before they invest advertising budget anywhere, they want to have a plan. And I think what was great is you had the plan for us, so there was less hesitation to put budgeting behind that. I'm proud to say we have a budget for the parts, and we have a budget that's commensurate with the return that we're getting. So it makes perfect sense.
Brian Benstock and Jensay Numa, thank you so much for sharing these valuable insights with our audience today. Sarah, next steps, I think, for the audience is if they want to get a hold of Revolution, revolutionparts.com.
Well, and Jensay, your team is busy in the chat today. Revolution Parts is here with us answering your questions. And again, more specific information, just drop your email here in the chat. Right now is the time to do it. And Jensay, this is such an incredible opportunity for the industry, for dealerships that are really looking at having a meaningful experience with their e-commerce parts departments.
Sarah, can I just add something? I had the privilege to be at an offsite. I think it was in Kansas City, and Jensay's team was there, and I got to hear the presenters speaking beforehand that worked at the company. These guys care. They really care. And so it shows up that, Jensay is this way all the time, but there were a lot of other great people there. And I loved what they were working on. They were working on things that were in order to make it easier for the dealers when there's a refund to get the money to the customer, to retain the customers you're getting. So every time you sell a part, you get a residual, and actually your advertising would go down if you have a residual, and people coming back to you. We're working on how to eliminate, reduce fraud from people that may use a bad credit information, and then the dealer is stuck with the part shipped and can't get his or her money back. And it was great to see. And again, I'm privileged to be at some meetings that many people don't get to go to. And I was at that meeting, and the people there didn't know who I was. I'm sitting in the back of the room listening, and I had a high sense of these guys have a high I care quotient, and that's really important for the people, for dealers to see from the people we do business with.
I will throw out Brian did a phenomenal speech at that day at the same time. Everybody was pretty fired up to hear from the voice of one of our customers. And I will say that what Brian said is 100% spot on. Like everything Revolution does is to help the dealerships have a better functionality to get into e-commerce and to make it more seamless. And the only reason why somebody, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
When was that meeting?
That was at the beginning of January.
Yeah, we told them what we were going to do. We told them, and lo and behold, we're here, and that's pretty awesome.
hmm hmm
Yeah. I said, I know my numbers look small now, but you know what? The light switch went on. I got it. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. And it happened. You gave me good vision in an area where I didn't have it. So thanks for everything.
$650,000 and still growing, Ted.
Yep. Fantastic information. Everybody, can't wait to hear what it's going to be next time we get together. Jensay, Numa, Revolution Parts, thank you so much. Brian Benstock, Paragon Honda, Paragon Acura, White Plains Honda, thank you so much for all you do. I'm Ted Ings with Sarah Van Tyne here on behalf of Revolution Parts.